Good morning. This is Mr. Zan. Today we are going to talk about DNA, proteins, and the characteristics of organisms. So in this lesson, you have to know that the cell characteristics depend on proteins, and also you have to understand the principle of the genetic code. The first point that you have to know that cell characteristics depend on proteins. So the characteristics that a cell or organism holds depend on the protein that the cell can manufacture. So again, the characteristics that a cell holds depend on the protein that the cell can manufacture. So the characteristics depends on the protein. So focus in this picture, we have more than one example. Let's start with the first example. Here we have cells which contain protein called keratin. So hair cells contain keratin. So the protein which is on the hair is keratin. The second example, here we have antibodies. Antibodies also, they are proteins in the immune response. So antibodies are the protein in the immune response. Number 3, we have saliva, and saliva contains amylase, and amylase is the protein which we find in the saliva which help to break down the food. And the fourth example, here we have neurotransmitters in the nerves they bind to receptor proteins in the synapse. So if you look at this picture, if you remember, we said that we have chemicals called neurotransmitters which carry the impulses. So here we have neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are example of proteins. And the last thing, in the plant, there is enzymes or proteins control photosynthesis process. So also plants have proteins or enzymes. Those enzymes or proteins control photosynthesis process. So cells must make different proteins to specialize. Okay, now you have to know that the instructions in a cell are carried as genes on the chromosomes. So the instructions which are in a cell, they are carried as genes. Where do we find those genes? We find them on the chromosomes. And as we said before, that chromosomes are largely composed of molecule which is DNA. DNA, we called it deoxyribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid. D for deoxyribo, N for nucleic, and A for acid, which is DNA. So again, the instructions in a cell are carried as genes. Those genes inside chromosomes. And as we said that chromosomes, they are a large chain of DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. Focus on this chart, okay, which tells us that DNA as genes controls the production of protein, which is responsible for characteristics. So here we have cell, and inside the cell we have chromosomes, and the chromosomes, they are a large chain of DNA. So here also DNA as gene controls production of protein, and the protein responsible for characteristics of the cell. Okay. Now focus on this diagram which shows the structure of DNA. Here we have the structure of DNA. You have to know that DNA carries its instructions as coded messages using 4 different chemical compounds called nucleotides. So Here we have a nucleotide, one nucleotide. Actually, all the messages or all the instructions can carried by 4 nucleotides. So one nucleotide is or contains a base. This is a base, and also sugar phosphate backbone. So here we have the base, and this is the sugar phosphate backbone. And as we say that we have 4 chemical compounds or 4 nucleotides. Those 4 nucleotides are in letters A, T, G, C. A means adenine, T means thymine, G means guanine, and C means cytosine. So they are already written here. Adenine for A, and the guanine for G, thymine for T, and cytosine for C. Those are the 4 chemical compounds or 4 nucleotides. Don't forget them, you have to memorize them. A, adenine, T, thymine, G, guanine, and C, cytosine. And you have to know that nucleotides form very long ladders or steps with bases. Those bases are the steps of the ladder. But the base pairs are always one of 2 types. Either adenine with thymine, so all the time we find adenine with thymine, and we found guanine with cytosine. So the base pairs are always one of 2 types. Adenine with thymine, so A with T, and the guanine with cytosine, G with C. So if you look here at the shape of the ladders, that it's twisted, you will find that it's twisted. Actually, the ladders are twisted. Those ladders are twisted because there is certain physical forces cause the ladder to twist around itself to form a spiral shape. This is spiral shape called a double helix. So again, if you look here at the shape of the ladders, you will find that it's twisted. Actually, the ladders are twisted because there is certain physical forces cause the ladder to twist around itself to form a spiral shape. This spiral shape is called a double helix. So the shape of the DNA is a double helix. So if I ask you what is the shape of DNA, you have to tell me that it's a double helix, which is a spiral shape. So why the shape of DNA is double helix? That's because certain physical forces cause the ladder to twist around itself. Okay, so we have physical forces cause the ladder to twist around itself. So again, in this page, you have to know that we have nucleotides. So the DNA molecule is made up of nucleotides. And the nucleotide contain base. This base could be A, T, C, or G with sugar phosphate backbone. And as we say, we have 4 types of nucleotides, which are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, and they make a ladder. And this ladder connect each 2 types together. So the base pairs are always one of those 2 types, either adenine with thymine or guanine with cytosine. And also I say that the shape of DNA is a double helix. Why? We say that because we have a physical forces causes the ladder to twist around itself to form a shape similar to spiral, which we call it double helix. Okay, now let's go to base pairing can explain how DNA is replicated. Now we want to know how DNA is replicated and how base pairing help or explain that. Now you have to know that to pass on the characteristics of the organism to its offspring, your body must be able to copy the coded instructions for these characteristics in copying division, which is mitosis. So again, to pass on the characteristics, to let the characteristics pass on of the organism to its offspring, your body must be able to copy the coded instructions for these characteristics. How these instructions or how these coded instructions copy? They copy in copying division, which is mitosis. If you remember, we said that if the cell is copied or divided to more than one cell have the same properties, this process is called mitosis. So, when the cell is copied or divided to more than one cell, those cells have the same properties. This process is called mitosis. So here, DNA in the chromosomes must be copied or replicated to pass on from generation to the next generation. So again, DNA in the chromosomes must be copied or replicated to pass on from generation to another generation. Okay, now focus on this diagram which shows the replication process and how it's essential for characteristics to be passed from one generation of cells to next. So let's start here. We have a short section of DNA. Okay, can you tell me how many base pairs do we have here? How many base pairs? Okay, base pairs, we have the first pair, adenine with thymine, guanine with cytosine, guanine and cytosine, thymine and adenine, adenine and thymine, and cytosine with guanine. So how many base pairs? Actually, we have 6 base pairs. And here, the molecules are unwound or not connected. So here the molecules are not connected, just to simply to make it simple for you to understand it. But inside the body they are connected. And also we have letters, those letters to tell us the type of the base. Okay, so during mitosis, the 2 chains separate. So now we are in mitosis process. The 2 chains separate. Okay, and each strand, this the first strand and this the second strand, and each strand acts as a template or a model. So here we have the first model and the second template or model for making another strand using the correct nucleotide. So here we have a strand. This strand used the correct nucleotide to make a new chain or new strand. So with the base which we have, for example, here we have G, which is a guanine base. So guanine only can connect with C, cytosine. And also here, for example, we have T, which is thymine, and thymine only can connect with adenine. So here the base use its correct nucleotide. Okay? And after that, there will be 2 short sections of DNA, and they are identical to one another and also identical to the original short section. So here, after mitosis, we have two short sections of DNA. They are identical to one another and also they are identical to the original short section. So here this DNA has been replicated. So we have here only one DNA section, short section, and here we have two short section of DNA. So this DNA has been replicated. Okay, so again, one short section of DNA, it divided into two strands, and each strand connects with correct nucleotides to form another short section of DNA. It's identical to one another and also it's identical to the original DNA short section. So here we have finished DNA, proteins, and the characteristics of organisms. Thank you for listening. Study well, and if you have any question, send it to me in B12. Thank you for listening and good luck.